Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, this is the Piracy Show, and of course, we're talking about the Polaris today. With the anniversary sale coming up, it stands to reason that the Polaris is once again going to be available for sale. Last year's price was $750, so this year's price, who knows, maybe a little bit higher, but is this a ship that's worth $750? Is this a ship that you should even consider? Now, I mean, that's a lot. Those are a lot of tough questions, but there are certain things that might mitigate that cost for you right up front. Have you been purchasing ships all along the way throughout the development of Star Citizen? You have maybe a Ghost, a Cutlass, a Freelancer, all kinds of things, and over the years that's added up to over $750 worth of ships, and maybe you want to melt down and get the Polaris. But still, you're talking about consolidating out of a number of ships and basically throwing all your eggs into one basket and more or less gambling all that money, all that sort of equity, if you want to say it that way, in one ship. What can you reasonably expect to get from that ship? And given the fact that this is a ship that doesn't even exist in a flyable state in the Star Citizen universe, how can you reasonably make inferences about its value or its capabilities? You can't just look at a bunch of JPEGs and say, well, it'll do this, that, and the other thing. Well, to a certain degree, yes, you can. Because beyond all the pretty pictures, there are the technical write-ups and technical details that go along with this ship, so you can extrapolate a certain amount of information about this ship. But first off, we have to establish some basic rules, and unlike a spaceship in a TV show, the Polaris is going to be an in-game ship, so it has to follow certain rules. It has to do certain things a certain way. You just can't simply write in a brand new component for one episode that allows you to break those rules. So in existing in a playable online universe, it has to kind of follow the rules of that universe, and you can't simply write up some type of MacGuffin that allows you to get out of a situation where ordinarily you would be trapped. But at the same time, even if you have some technical details, how can you possibly sit back and just say, oh, it'll do this and it'll do that, but it probably won't do the other thing? How do you really know? Well, there are a few easy ones that we can do right off the bat. Now, here are the three military capital ships that you can purchase in Star Citizen: the Javelin, the Idris, the Polaris. Which one is the fastest? Well, the Polaris, obviously. It's the smallest, and it is described as blazingly fast. Its real only defense is probably its speed versus the other two. Next up, range. Well, the Polaris is also a long-range patrol vessel. So it's obviously got to have some legs. It's got to be able to go a fair distance. I mean, if the Vanduul turn up in XYZ system, the Polaris has to be able to get there, possibly get there ahead of the fleet and be that first responder. Next up, firepower. How much firepower does it have? Is it even going to be good? Well, in basing the entire ship around more or less one weapon system, which occupies a fair amount of internal real estate in the ship as well, the torpedoes, well, they have to be good. In creating this, and I mean, this goes to another argument about simply building the entire ship around more or less one weapon system, is that they can't be terrible. I mean, in charging $750 for the ship and then basing it on this one weapon system, a weapon system that every time you fire it costs you money, they can't be shitty. If they were, the uproar from that would be far worse than the Cutlass uproar ever was. You can't charge $750 for a ship and then give it a shitty weapon system. And with so many ships in the Star Citizen universe using torpedoes, you have to figure that torpedoes are going to be a fairly effective weapon. Next up, Can it take fighters with it? Well, certainly. Now, you may not want to carry a fighter, but you can service fighters. For instance, like, let's say you don't want to be trapped in a situation where XX Tron Fan 89 or whoever parked his Gladius on your ship and then logged off, and now you're stuck with a Gladius in your hangar bay, and your other people are saying, hey, can I come and refuel and rearm? And you're like, no, I can't, because I've got this idiot's Gladius stuck in my hangar. I mean, there are certain, realities and practicalities in the Star Citizen universe that would come into play, so chances are you may not want to carry a fighter with you or use your ship as a base for other people's fighters, but as a service station, more or less, you can use that fighter for that. So now you have speed, you have long range, you have firepower, and you have the ability to support fighters. Does that mean automatically that it's an effective capital ship? No, it doesn't. But you see, it follows a very good rule in ship design, which is outrun anything you can't outgun and outgun anything you can't outrun. Which is to say, it may not be able to go toe-to-toe with a javelin, but it can escape from the javelin. It may not be able to escape a fighter, but it can certainly outgun that fighter. And you can say, well, I'll bring 50 fighters and I'll shoot it down. Yeah, but it can also support its own fighters as well to augment that anti-fighter defense. And in that situation, I'm going to bring in 50 fighters, or I'm going to bring in 50 bombers, whatever, the Polaris, out of all the capitals, is probably the one that has the best chance to escape from that. So let's go back to the beginning. What do we really know about the Polaris? Well, the basic concept of the ship is sound. The idea makes sense. How it's designed, how it's built. Now, you might have some quibbles about where one part is compared to another, but the basic premise of this ship is sound. What do you get for this ship? Well, you get the fastest of the capitals, you have effective weapons, you have long range, speed, and the ability to support fighters. So you really have a ship that is an effective first strike tool. You can take this along with fighters to support it and go around the map much more quickly than, say, someone with a more traditional heavy capital ship, and you can strike in different areas possibly where they can't be. This is going to be a ship that's going to be effective at taking down smaller ships, weaker ships than it, and escaping before anyone can respond. Now, that's all well and good, but how usable is it? Because remember, this is a capital ship, so it's going to require multiple people, or at least a person and NPCs, to operate. How many people do you need to operate this ship? 6. 6 is not an unreasonable amount of people to ask for to operate a ship like this. Now, of course, you can take the crew all the way up to 14, but 6 is what you need to operate the ship, and that's not a heck of a lot of people. So it's fairly safe to assume that within your org you can pull together 6 people to operate this ship, and the more people you bring, well, you can fill out the crew on the ship, and then you can bring more fighter support, or you could do that with NPCs, yada yada yada. So it's not that hard to get the usage out of this ship that you would want to get out of it. You're not going to be sitting there waiting for, say, 20 people to operate your ship. 6 is a fairly reasonable number for a ship like this. In fact, it's probably even a little bit on the low side. Now, what does this ship really get you in the end? Let's say you log into the game and you are flying around in a Polaris. What does this ship really get you that a Super Hornet doesn't? Well, if a Super Hornet kind of goes into a space station and looks at the missions that are available, he might see, shoot down 5 Vanduul fighters and we'll pay you 5,000 UEC bounty per fighter. And he goes, oh, that's a reasonable mission for my ship. But then he might look and see another mission that says, go behind enemy lines and destroy 5 Vanduul transports and we'll pay you, 100,000 UEC per transport, because those are, big, spaceships, and we'll pay you 100,000 UEC. But he's like, oh, I'd like to do that, but I don't have the firepower to shoot down those Vanduul transports. Well, the Polaris would, and there would have to be content like that. There would have to be missions like that in Star Citizen, not those precise values, but that basic idea would have to exist in Star Citizen. Otherwise, you can't sell a bunch of Idrises, Javelins, and Polarises and have the owners of those ships going broke because nothing in the game rewards them enough to maintain the ship. At the very basic level, I mean, in as much as there would have to be ores out there that are valuable enough that an Orion owner could make a living mining those ores and doing that, obviously, at very large scale. And the same thing for salvaging. If you have a reclaimer, well, there has to be salvage out there worth enough to maintain a reclaimer and also turn a profit. And the same with military ships. There would have to be missions or quests or whatever, things that would reward you for completing actions with those ships that would help you not only maintain the ship, but make a living while operating it. Now, in the end, is this ship worth $750 plus? Now, of course, we come to the big question. Is the Polaris worth $750 plus? Well, if you're like a lot of people in Star Citizen, chances are that $750 over the time that you've been backing Star Citizen, you know, you've picked up a ship here or there, piecemeal, one here, one there over the years, and you actually have, for lack of a better term, you have $750 or more dollars worth of equity in Star Citizen that you can simply melt and purchase this ship with. So you can have a few of ships of your own, maybe a few fighters or whatever, and still have this ship. So realistically, the Polaris is not really a $750 ship. It's just a question of reorganizing money that you've already spent, that you've already said goodbye to. So it's not really that big of a leap for you to get this ship because you're already kind of technically there. Now, for someone coming in fresh, someone who maybe just has a basic game package and maybe one LTI ship, and they're going, oh my God, I think I want to get a Polaris. Well, then it's more a question of, let's say you have that basic Aurora game package and you're like, but I want the Polaris. I want the big dog. You know, I want this ship. Is the time it would take you to get from Aurora to Polaris, whatever that is, in terms of whether it's probably going to be a lot more than weeks, probably more in months, if not more, to get from that ship to that. Is that time spent playing the game, grinding up to a Polaris? Is that worth would skipping that be worth $750 to you? What is your time worth to you? And that's the question to ask. In the end, whether or not it's worth that $750 comes up to only one opinion, and the only opinion that matters for you, and that is your opinion. Is that $750 worth my time? Is that ship a better ship to have than this ship and that ship and the other ship? Only you can really make that judgment. And so, this is my opinion on it. This is what I see when I look at this ship. But now the question is yours to answer.